Much harder if you're a small business owner without many options.
Donald Trump says he's terminating all discussions on trade with Canada.
1 in 5 small businesses who are already dealing with tariff costs won't be able to last the next 6 months.
The Arctic, once the planet's last frozen wilderness, is no longer just ice and emptiness. It's becoming the most valuable chessboard in global trade and energy. Canada and Norway, two mid-sized democracies usually overshadowed by superpowers, have quietly struck a deal worth hundreds of billions. Their blueprint? To remake the future of energy exports, Arctic shipping, and security networks, while cutting Washington out of the picture. For decades, the U.S. assumed it set the rules of the North Atlantic. But today, for the first time in modern history, America is being sidelined. Canada and Norway are laying pipelines, ports, and Arctic corridors that could shape 40% of tomorrow's global trade flows. So here's the real question. Has America already lost the Arctic before the contest even began? Subscribe to our channel and tap like if you're following this Arctic showdown. For most of modern history, Canada's economy was locked to the United States. Trade agreements, pipelines, and shipping routes all ran south. Washington dictated terms, and Ottawa complied. But the Arctic is heating up, literally. It's warming 4 times faster than the rest of the world, according to the IPCC. Melting ice is carving new shipping routes that slash Asia-Europe transit times by nearly 40%. And the USGS estimates the Arctic holds 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural gas. This is no longer a frozen desert. It's an energy jackpot. Norway already supplies over 25% of Europe's natural gas, second only to Russia's past dominance. Canada, meanwhile, controls vast LNG reserves and the strategic Northwest Passage. Together, they are building an Atlantic-Arctic corridor, a framework that could reroute $500 billion in trade by 2050. What stuns Washington is not just the scale, but that it's happening entirely without U.S. oversight. It began with a quiet announcement in late 2025. Canada and Norway unveiled their Arctic partnership, linking pipelines, LNG terminals, and northern shipping lanes. Canada's Atlantic LNG projects in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, once meant as supplements to U.S. exports, are instead being tied directly to Norway's Barents Sea infrastructure. Norway brings the offshore rigs, Arctic tankers, and icebreakers. Canada adds speed and redundancy. Energy from both shores of the Atlantic plugged straight into Europe's grid. For Europe, this isn't about profit, it's survival. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Norway became the continent's top gas supplier, exporting a record 122 billion cubic meters by 2023. But Oslo knew its ceiling. Canada fills the gap. Washington, meanwhile, fumes. U.S. LNG facilities in Texas and Louisiana pump 60 million tons annually, but their ships take weeks longer to cross the Atlantic. From Canada's east coast, it's just a 5-day sail, 20% cheaper and far more direct. That's why this deal isn't just economics, it's a geopolitical earthquake. President Donald Trump blasted Canada. If they want to sell gas without us, America will hit them with tariffs. Big tariffs. The biggest. Prime Minister Mark Carney countered, "A tariff on Canada is a tax on Americans." Ottawa's point was clear. Washington risks hurting its own people more than Canada. Europe applauded. Germany and France called it a stabilizing force. Norway's prime minister insisted it wasn't about excluding the U.S., but about resilience. Still, Washington bristled. The State Department released a lukewarm statement about valuing Canada as a partner, diplomatic code for frustration. For Ottawa, this is about sovereignty. After decades in Washington's shadow, Canada is proving it can build global alliances on its own. Canada exports $450 billion in goods annually to the U.S., but diversification is accelerating. By linking with Norway, Ottawa is building a second economic pillar that bypasses U.S. dependence. Airlines are already eyeing Arctic routes. Shipping giants estimate 12-day time savings compared to the Suez Canal. That's billions in fuel and insurance. The fallout is being felt across U.S. border states. Wisconsin and Minnesota farmers are losing contracts as Europe pivots toward Canadian supply chains. Michigan's factories report shrinking orders. Ports from Houston to New Orleans are losing business to Halifax and Bergen, which are emerging as the new LNG hubs. IMF economists estimate Canada-Norway Arctic trade could top $120 billion annually by 2030, money no longer flowing through U.S. terminals. Worse, U.S. tariffs could backfire. By raising the price of Canadian imports, Washington only speeds Ottawa's push to expand ties with Europe and Asia. Already, Canadian boycotts of U.S. brands cost companies $150 million a year. Chains like McDonald's and Denny's are seeing double-digit sales drops along the border. Protests in Toronto and Vancouver brandish signs reading Canada First, energy for Canadians, not tariffs for Trump. Meanwhile, U.S. border towns are struggling. Buffalo businesses report Canadian traffic down nearly 40%. Gas stations and malls once filled with cross-border shoppers are half empty. For Canadians, this is independence. For Americans nearby, it feels like abandonment. Globally, the ripple effects are massive. Europe hails the deal. France signed a $15 billion LNG contract with Canada. Denmark and Iceland want in. Beijing warns it may challenge U.S. tariffs at the WTO. Russia sees the partnership as a direct challenge to its Arctic clout. And Washington? It's being left behind. The future is clear. Canada and Norway will anchor Europe's energy security for decades. The U.S. retaliates with tariffs, risking a fractured world economy. Two parallel energy blocs emerge, a U.S.-led system and a Canada-Norway-EU alliance. Whoever controls Arctic shipping could dominate 40% of global trade by 2050. That's why this isn't just about pipelines. It's about the balance of the world economy itself. Subscribe for more fact-based reporting, and like the video if you're following this Arctic power shift.